Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If you'd all stand, join me with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
First order of business is to approve the county board minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion on the minutes. Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Tabitha, do we have any additions, deletions to the agenda?
Not at this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I'll
Look
make
for a
a
motion
motion.
for the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
That's all we can.
That motion passes. Thank you. Our next item of business is Hands of Hope. Steph is here this morning. Good morning. Please, right over yonder.
We got to get our coffee, Mr. Chair. Got to get our
2
coffee.
cups. I recommend
We
2
need 2
cups.
cups of coffee.
Yeah, exactly.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I think I've met most of you at one point or another. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for all your support throughout the last year. I have a couple of goodies for you, so I'm going to hand those over. You like goodies? So I have a limited amount of time, and I think most of you are somewhat familiar with the work that we do. But let me just start by saying the mission of Hands of Hope is to advocate, educate, and promote societal change for those that are victimized by crime and violence. A lot of what we do is services directly to victims in a number of ways, mostly providing them with support, helping them through the process of whatever their specific needs are. So it's very much victim-driven. Some of them come in looking for assistance with filing a report with law enforcement, or needing help with an order for protection, or understanding the criminal process. But again, it's very much client-driven on what they need. Our biggest change within the last year is we have been able to secure some funding to do more violence prevention education. And so that's been a big thing of ours in the last year, trying to get back into the schools. We've been doing a lot of outreach to civic groups and businesses, and so we're very much promoting that. If anyone is involved with any groups and would like to have someone come in and speak about services available or specific crime areas that we serve, for example, domestic violence and its impact on the workplace, that type of thing. We have seen an increase, in particular, I feel, in the last maybe several months, of sexual assault calls. And we've always worked a lot with children affected by sexual assault, but we've seen a lot more adult sexual assault calls, and we've done a lot more response to the hospital for evidence collection kits and that type of thing. So I'm not really sure about that trend, but it's still very much happening. I also just wanted to acknowledge, we're doing everything that we can to try to raise funding to do the violence prevention program, the education out in the community. We have very good support from the state in providing direct services to victims. The piece that they don't really fund is prevention. So we've been seeking other types of resources to do that. So we've written some grants, and we've also, we had our first big fundraising concert in March, which raised over $7,000. So we were very pleased with that for a first-time endeavor, and the ballroom was packed, which we were very pleased to see. And we plan to do it again next March, so you can watch for that. That'll be kind of fun. And then also just wanted to put a plug in for our need for volunteers. We're recruiting again. We have a 24-hour crisis hotline, and so we rely on community members that are trained to answer that hotline when the office is closed. And that gives our staff a break from doing the work that we do, because it can cause some secondary trauma in some ways to the people that are providing the services if they don't care for themselves. And so we like to make sure that they have a break of some sort from doing that. And when we don't have volunteers on call, then our staff are the ones that fill in for that. So we're very much actively recruiting volunteers ongoing in order to help with that. So let me just open it up to any questions that you have about Hands of Hope and the work that we do.
Gentlemen, comments, questions, discussion?
Mr. Chair, again, it's just another organization that this community, needs to know more about. It's just, again, what the Resource Center does and that sort. It's very, I don't know, whether you say it's a need or unique or whatever, but again, I myself personally appreciate what Hands of Hope gives to the community.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I thank you too for all the services you provide. When people need help, there's a place to go. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for all you do, providing someone shelter and giving someone a warm bed and a warm meal to have. That's God's work, and thank you for everything you do.
Steph, I don't have to tell you, I sit on the Hands of Hope board, and I know just a tad bit about it, but Hands of Hope is an organization that is often not needed by the greater population of the world. Certainly the greater population of Morrison County has no need for Hands of Hope. But for those that have been in the situation, whether it's been a crime of violence, whether it's been a property crime, whatever it might have been, it's those people that you're there for. It's those people that you treasure, if you will, because that's your client base, and I get that very much. And it takes special people to do what you do, because you're 24 hours a day, and I know that. And I know the volunteers that work with Hands of Hope are tremendous, phenomenal, actually. So thank you again for everything. I don't know if you have anything else for us.
So how is one, if they want to become a volunteer, who do they contact? Is it out there?
Yep, they should contact Amanda Caping.
And how
Office.
do they contact that person? Facebook? Are they in the phone book?
We have a Facebook page.
Okay.
They can call our regular business line and ask for Amanda. Anyone can connect them up with her. To be a volunteer on our crisis line, there's a training piece of that, and once someone gets through training, they can commit to as much or as little in a month as they want to. It could be one night, but even one night of, like 4:30 at night till 8 o'clock in the morning or 8:30 in the morning, that helps give our staff a break from having to worry if the phone's going to ring or if they're going to have to go out to the hospital or that type of thing. And so that's a very good question. But Amanda Caping is our volunteer coordinator. And just to piggyback on what you were saying, Jeff, we have a great staff. I could not ask for anyone better. They're very committed to the work that we do, and they just do a really great job. Our turnover is very limited, which I think says a lot for our organization, and we try really hard to take care of the people that we have there. And I really appreciate, again, the support that we get from the county, which comes through contract services with Morrison County Social Services, but we do really appreciate the help that we do get. So I want to thank
Steph, maybe you can comment just a little tiny bit on your relationship with law enforcement and your relationship with the county attorney's office.
Sure. It's great. I think we have a really great relationship here. We get calls when law enforcement are working with victims. Sometimes victims don't want to work with us, and so we don't get those calls, but a lot of times they at least make the referral and let them know that we're there. Sometimes the officers walk them right over to our office if it's during the day, so I think we have a really good relationship with them. We have a really good relationship with the county attorney's office. If someone comes up there as a victim and they need to speak to an advocate, Patty at the county attorney's office will refer them over to us. We work with the attorneys and the victims as they're getting ready for trials and preparing for that and answering whatever questions that we have or that they have as we go through that process. We have county staff, or county employees on our board of directors. So not only do you sit on our board of directors, but we have Todd Chantry, we have Krista Tyson from Social Services, we have Tom Swenson from Corrections, so we have a lot of involvement with the county and the work that we do. So I feel like we have really good systems response here. Like I said, the hospital has been phenomenal, making requests for advocates when they have victims there, not just sexual assault victims, but also domestic violence victims if someone comes in and they've been injured in any way. And the clinic, too. We just, last week had a call from the clinic. So it's just, in general, a really good response from people in our community and very aware of us here, which I think is helpful.
Very good. Gentlemen, anything further?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very kindly, staff. Have a good day.
Yes, you too.
Next item of business is the social services report.
You're going to give us credit, okay.
I was just telling Steph that she didn't give herself credit for all the work that they really did, because they worked with almost 200 kids in their abused children's program in 2017. So they do a lot of good work and do have a good relationship with our agency, though. So that's they're very needed, as was said earlier. So
Thank you.
good morning, Commissioners. Good morning. This morning I have Penny Pesta here to talk about the developmental disability services we provide here in Morrison County, and she has put a report in your packet to go through. So I'll turn over to Penny.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So talking a little bit about developmental disability, commonly referred to just as DD, case management. There's a number of different things that go into providing case management for an individual with a developmental disability or related condition. One of the new things that has come up in 2017 is everybody coming in new requesting this service is required to get a min-choice assessment as part of their eligibility, and they'll also be required to get that assessment at least every 3 years, whether or not they want a waiver, just in order to maintain developmental disability case management. So that is new, and kind of keep that in the back of our minds as we go through and how all of our different programs intersect and need one another in order to provide the services that we do in social services. So looking at your first graph, this is talking a little bit about our statistics of how many cases we are providing case management to. This includes both just traditional Rule 185 targeted case management as well as waiver case management. This is both numbers. Developmental disability case management stays pretty consistent across the years. We see people who maybe go off, but then we also have an influx of people coming on. But our trend has been pretty consistent across the years, the number of people we're providing services to. And such, we continue to employ 3.5 people to provide case management services to this population.
This is probably one of the most stable case management services we provide in terms of just from year to year. Unlike mental health or child protection or children's mental health that can go way up or can come down, but it doesn't seem to come down so much anymore. But DD has been fairly stable, as she has said, for a long time.
The next chart that you'll see is going to talk a little bit about the waiver and targeted case management revenue that we get as a county for providing case management. You'll notice that waiver case management, your orange line there, has spiked in 2017. There was a trend kind of going up, but it spiked high in 2017. Some of that is because, as you remember, St. Camilla's closed. We moved all those individuals from that ICFDD setting over to waiver foster care. And so those 12 individuals went on to a waiver. So that increased that waiver revenue. You'll see for 2018, we're already trending up to exceed what we went in 2017 as well. That is largely because the state has opened up the number of waivers available to individuals. Previously, we had about 70 people that we provided traditional case management to, 130 that were on a waiver. Now we have 150 people on a waiver. That's an additional 30 people on a waiver that gets funded differently for case management services. That's funded as a 15-minute unit. Every 15 minutes that a case manager provides a service, talks to that person, talks to that person's family, talks to that person's providers, foster care, whomever they may be, that's a revenue for case management under the waiver model for funding. So that describes a little bit to you why we're seeing those trends. However, at some point that has to cap off, right? Because we only have so many hours in a staff's day. So no matter how many people we put on a waiver, the staff only have so much time in their day in order to recoup that.
I'd just like to say, too, that this has really been a benefit for some of these clients because, as you might recall years ago, generally speaking, it was very difficult to get new persons on a DD waiver unless we lost a person from a DD waiver. Now, as Penny has indicated, they've opened those waiver slots, so more individuals with disabilities can get waivered services, which has been a benefit to families, to adults, to kids, whatever the case might be, and help to maintain them in the community and support their system of care. So,
Mr. Chair, if I can, is this the program that you talked about limiting those waivers? There are some areas, though, that have, if they're not used in another county or area of the state, they can be transferred over. There's not as much limitation on it, or what am I thinking of? No?
I'm not sure what you're thinking
Okay.
of, but it's not these particular waiver programs.
Okay.
So
You either use them all or you don't use them all, and this is how many you have access to.
that used to be when we had waiver slots.
Okay.
But we
that's
don't have
changed.
waiver slots anymore.
Okay. I don't know why I get
So it
confused.
is just all waiver dollars.
Okay.
We have a waiver amount, a waiver ceiling that we have to spend, but even if we add additional people, Penny's very good
Still-
about requesting
Yeah.
additional resources to help meet the needs of those individuals, so.
If I may, Mr. Chair, Brad, when you say you have to spend, so if you get an example, $100 in waivers, do you have to spend that?
Well, how it works is that we authorize a certain level of services for every individual. And so we authorize, let's say we offer $1,000 in services. That individual may not use all $1,000 worth of services, or the provider may be slow in billing. But they give us an allocation amount that we can use to meet the needs of our residents, for those that are eligible. So, but if we see that we have a new client coming in that may be a high-cost client, given their needs, then Penny can request additional waiver dollars so we can go over that amount that they've allocated.
I think that's what I'm thinking of, not so much the number of people, but the number of dollars available.
But we did have slots. Years ago, we had actual slots. So we'd have like 40 slots for DD. That's all we could use. So 40 individuals could be served. They may give us one additional slot. They may not per year. Now it's just, it's an allocation amount.
And they do give us certain allocation, a number of allocations that we could add new individuals on that will give us new money into the budget. So we start out with a budget, and then for however many allocations were awarded, those, if we put somebody who is going to have some pretty high intensive service needs onto one of those allocations, that would bring new money into our budget.
So if somebody comes from a bordering county and they're on DD, and they come into Morrison County, does that money transfer from that county, or do we start, or vice versa?
So if that person is receiving a service that is considered time excluded, then that person maintains their case management, their budget, everything in that county. They're just residing here, but everything stays with that county. That county provides that case management and does everything. If they are not receiving a time excluded service, then their waiver and every allocation for them gets transferred into our budget and we manage them. So they would not take it would not take new money or any of our budget if they are already on the waiver.
And Mr. Chair, when they say budget, those are dollars coming from the state, not county funded, very limited county dollars that would apply to any of this.
Waiver dollars are federal, mostly federal dollars.
Federal dollars. They flow through the state, or do they just come directly?
Yeah, they flow through the state, yeah.
Thank you.
The next slide that I put in here is the waiver enrollment, and that kind of talks to how I said that we've had about 20 new cases overall on the waiver since 2016, and you'll see that trend has gone up.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Penny, so when we look at the waiver enrollment, or as you explain how this program works through the waiver process, so does that mean that the revenue, the federal revenue coming through that comes to the county is the limiting factor on how many individuals we serve in Morrison County? And then to follow up to that, if the funding, let's say, like you have on the screen there, is at 147, for enrollment. So if we have, if we're serving roughly 200 people annually, so how are those people addressed if they're not part of the enrollment? If I can ask that, please.
So if we go back to the case management revenue, there's two. There's the waiver individuals, and then there's also individuals who are not on waiver. Those individuals are provided service through vulnerable adult developmental disability targeted case management. Then their services are funded through semi-independent living services, which is a state program that can provide some in-home, some employment is a new service that can be funded underneath that semi-independent living services.
So those, if I may, Mr. Chair, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but so those other individuals that we serve that are not in the waiver program then are funded through the state program, the vulnerable adults, that's state funded.
They're largely funded through that program. Semi-independent living services requires a 30% county match for the services that are provided underneath that umbrella.
So to my previous question then, so what becomes the limiting factor to the number of people that we would serve at Morrison County? I mean, you're covering a lot of ground with 3.5 FTEs and revenue that's coming in largely out of our control. If we serve more individuals, do we receive more revenue, or we receive X amount of revenue, which limits the number of people we serve?
Ultimately, we cannot limit who we serve. If they don't have a pay source and they still meet the developmental disability criteria, we have to serve them, and we'll serve them under case management just like any other program. And then it's up to us to manage the dollars available to serve those individuals. So just because we only have this amount of waiver dollars and this amount of targeted case management dollars, if they're eligible for developmental disability case management, we will serve them.
We just spread the resources thinner.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
And the additional revenues come from where?
Levy dollars, so there's
Okay.
a little bit of levy dollars in this program area. But for the most part, as you can see from the graph, the staff do a good job of billing the waiver for the services we provide. And so really, as you talk about the overall budget of this particular area within social services, we try to manage using the waiver and targeted case management. And a vast majority of these individuals will be eligible for medical assistance because of their disability, whether it be based on their parent income or just based on their own disability. So most of these individuals have MA because they're going to have some needs, whether it be medical or care needs that are going to need to be covered, and the family or individual cannot afford them.
Sure. Thank you.
I'm going to scroll you down to the DD waiver budget. As you can see, we've talked a little bit about this. Our trend has, we've put a number of people onto the budget. That comes with additional costs and dollars that have been put into Morrison County's DD waiver budget. We do a nice job of, the blue is what we've been given as a budget. The orange is what we've paid out.
And again, this is part of that overarching cost report that I provide in the fall. So part of that 89 million roughly dollars that flow through social services. This is part of that cost pool report.
The next graph is talking a little bit about those waiver allocations that we discussed. Those are the allocations that bring in new dollars into our budget. Like Brad was saying earlier, historically, this has been very, very limited, that counties would get 0, maybe 1 allocation to bring in new dollars to fund this. And we've seen over the last 3 years that has really shifted. I don't know how long that shift will remain, but we will continue utilizing it while it's there.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask, when you look, Brad and Penny, at increasing that allocation, how do we go about that? Where do we go when we have an incident like when St. Camilla's closed? We're talking federal dollars, right? So is this an appeal that we make to federal representation? Is there other avenues how this is handled through your office, Brad? Or so how do we make that known, or do we just wait for a correspondence to come to say that you get one more slot or one more allocation? How does that work?
So the DD waiver is on a calendar year. So at December of every year, they identify for each county how many allocations they're going to get the next year. For the example, like when the ICFDD St. Camilla's closed down, I worked closely with DHS to let them know what was happening, to let them know what our needs in Morrison County was going to be to create 4 new waivered foster care homes. So work with multiple departments down at DHS, not only to create those homes, but also to request the allocations. I watch the budget very closely. Every single week, I meet with a team of social workers in our office. We identify who's coming on, what increased services and budgets, what service reductions are happening. We meet once a month as a full team to review that, where's our utilization at, and see that budget. If we are getting near to the budget and we have different requests coming in for some specific needs of an individual, I reach out to DHS and request increased allocations. They have been very good to work with and are able to support in what we have requested and needed thus far.
So really, it's up to DHS to manage the federal relations between this pot of dollars. It's we just communicate with DHS and not really the federal folks at all.
Okay.
Just a note on the age as I look at who we have on developmental disability waivers, noting that population is younger this year than it was last year, and kind of seeing that trend, which is, I think, really good. It means we're getting in earlier to provide services and supports to help an individual meet every trajectory along their developmental milestones to the highest ability. The sooner we can provide that and start those developing those skills to the best that they can, the better long-term outcomes that they'll have as a person.
Penny, when we're talking developmental disabilities, we're talking about physical and mental. Am I correct or not?
Cognitive. So typically an individual with an IQ of less than 70 and has an impact on their adaptive functioning.
Okay.
Is the criteria.
Very good.
Mm-hmm. And just the last component I want to chat a little bit about was that semi-independent living services that we talked about. This is what provides services and supports to individuals not on the waiver, the funding stream, allowing us to do that. And the biggest thing in this area is that this year, in working with Department of Human Services, Morrison County was able to request and encourage them to look at offering and allowing employment to be one of the services covered underneath semi-independent living services, which had not been previously. So individuals who were not on a waiver didn't have an opportunity to gain any work supports unless it was strictly county funded. And so now that has been implemented and accepted and able to be delivered underneath this semi-independent living services. You'll see the budget for this continues to reduce, and the number of participants on this continue to reduce, which directly correlates to the number of people going on the waiver. So we'll see less of this when we see more people using the waiver.
Mr. Chair, some of the skill set applied to, well, most areas over in social services, but whether it be the adult unit or child unit, is really figuring out which program best suits that client and where the funding comes from and how they're best served. And it really takes that team, and I think all of them do a very good job about trying to really figure out, know the programs in and out, know where the funding comes from in and out, and then know how best to meet the needs and set goals and meet those goals for each individual client. So they really do a very good job of really looking at the whole picture and really looking at the whole picture from a client perspective and from a funding perspective. And that's what I think makes that successful, and they do very well.
Yeah, because there are individuals, come up with chemical health, mental health, developmental disabilities, and kind of maybe have a little bit of each, and it's really up to the supervisor to decide which program can best fit those needs, whether mental health is prevalent, chemical dependency is prevalent, it's a developmental disability that's affecting their functioning ability. And so the supervisors do a good job of talking about which program area can really manage and help support that individual with a disability.
Well, based on the numbers and based on the budget, and everything is pretty right on the money. It's amazing, to tell you the truth.
We have really great staff and case managers who do a wonderful job of not only caring about who they're providing case management to, but really making sure that they know the services and supports that they can offer to the people that they're providing case management to.
You bet. Very good.
Thank you very much.
Other questions for Penny?
Thank you. Pam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If not, I'll call Cindy up here, and we're going to kind of keep on this topic of waivers. And I asked Penny and Cindy to put together an overarching waiver report for the board, as this is the primary funding for a lot of programs that we provide. Social Services is responsible for managing all the waivers. We have delegated the elderly waiver to the public health staff, and so Cindy manages the elderly waiver, and Penny is the overall manager of the other waivers within social services. So I will turn it over to Cindy and Penny to talk a little bit more about some of the waivers we provide.
So what happens often after Penny has managed cases for years, some of those folks will turn 65, and then we have to make a decision about whether or not they're appropriate to remain on some of the waivers that are over in social services, or if they're appropriate to roll over to these waivers, because they provide different services. So we want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of those clients. An example might be sometimes a person will remain on a CADI waiver because they can continue to have supportive employment, which is important to them. If we take someone off of the CADI waiver and put them onto elderly waiver or alternative care, they no longer can work in supportive employment. So that's often a factor for us in deciding, do they stay on a CADI or DD waiver, or do they roll over to an alternative care or elderly waiver program. So 65 is only one of the criteria. When folks approach that age 65, Penny and I are having conversations about where does this person best fit? What do they want, first of all? If continuing to work is very important to them, then that's what we will focus on, and we'll keep them in the waiver world that's managed by social services. If they've reached a point where they no longer have a desire to work and we can meet their needs under a smaller, less expensive service package, they'll get rolled over into the alternative care or elderly waiver world. So the majority of our clients are not enrolled through the social services side, but just folks that are turning 65, applying for health insurance, and we'll get referrals through from the county financial team saying this person is eligible for XYZ. Alternative care and elderly waiver are both programs that service the over 65 population. The difference is the services that they provide and the eligibility. So someone on alternative care needs to be over 65, but they can have a higher income threshold and they can have a higher asset limit. So the idea behind alternative care is to try and capture people that are at risk for nursing home placement, that we want to provide services to in the community, but still have a little bit of money. Some of the folks on alternative care have a zero pay for the amount of services that they provide, and some of them are on a graduated fee based on their assets and their income. So it's one of those early intervention kind of programs for over 65 folks that might need a few services. It has a smaller budget than elderly waiver, so it does not cover things like assisted living. So if someone wants to move into assisted living and they have too many assets, they're asked to first spend those assets down, and then they'll qualify for elderly waiver down the road. So that's the only program, and of course the employment, that is not covered under alternative care. Elderly waiver is basically anyone over 65 who meets the eligibility for medical assistance, so that $3,000 or less asset guideline, and they meet the nursing facility level of care, meaning they're at risk for nursing home placement, not that they're all absolutely going to the nursing home. It too is a program with the focus of trying to keep people out of the nursing home with services in the community, and that includes the assisted living. Morrison County is blessed right now to have a very large number of assisted living facilities, although we are starting to see several of them put limits on how many people on medical assistance they will take. So that's starting to be an issue. It's not absolutely that we've hit the wall and there's no beds available, but we're hearing more and more. 10 people on this waiting list, 12 people on that waiting list. So what we see happening is people will move into an assisted living facility on their own funds, run out of funds, and then have to apply for assistance. The facility doesn't want to have to move those folks out, so they tend to take the people who are in-house running out of funds and put them into the medical assistance percentage of people that they'll take. So what happens is if we have people out in the community who are already at that point that they're out of funds, it's a little harder to place them in assisted living because the assisted living want to take their internal folks first.
And Mr. Chair, that's because the facilities have specific contracts that they have to, the pricing is different.
Correct. They can charge more for a private pay funded than they will get reimbursed for a medical assistance client. So most of the facilities set a percentage. We'll take 30 or 40% of our clients will be on medical assistance, and that's to manage their budget so that they can stay operational.
And those contracts or those, that pricing is all set by the state? Or is that something
For the private pay?
Yeah. No, not for the private pay, but for the medical assistance.
For the medical assistance, yes. And it's based on need. So a person that needs more hands-on care and more services, they get reimbursed more. It's not a flat amount for every person. It's very much based on what they call their case mix. The other package or the other program that we administer through public health is called Essential Community Supports, and this program came out about 3-4 years ago. It's just a real small program, so people don't have to be at that risk to go into the nursing home, but they still could use a little help. So this program only covers a few things, such as home-delivered meals, lifeline, homemaking. If they reach the point where they need skilled nursing or home health aid for hands-on kind of care, then they don't fit the criteria for this program. So they just have a very small budget, and it was another attempt on the state's part to just come up with a way to, again, keep people safe in their homes a little bit longer, maybe stretch their assets a little bit further, that kind of thing. So it's just a skinny program. So those are the 3 programs that we're administering on the public health side. As far as our revenue, it was pretty static, if you can see there in 2015 and 16. 2017, we really had a spike. And I went back and did a little research on that because I was kind of curious about it. And it really was that we had a few high users that were in that alternative care program. So they had some funds. They were paying a portion of their services, but they just really were high users. I would predict that we will continue to see that alternative care program be utilized a little bit more and the elderly waiver a little bit less, just because we have more people rolling into retirement with some funds, and they'll need to spend those down first before they're eligible for the elderly waiver. The difference between those is that elderly waiver is mostly federal dollars. Alternative care is a few more state dollars. Minnesota is one of the few states that has a program like alternative care because they feel very strongly that they want to prevent nursing home placement. The that rolls back to the limited number of nursing home beds, that we can't put any more nursing homes up or increase the beds of the facilities that we have. They're forcing us to look at other ways to keep people in the community prior to nursing home placement. So year-to-date, I think we're on target to look a little bit more like 2016 than we did in 2017. Questions?
The one thing I would say about this waiver, Commissioners, is that elderly waiver does not have a cap. They've never had a budget to manage in the elderly waiver world. It's just who's ever eligible can come in and apply, and they will be served based on their needs. Unlike DD, CADI, CAC, TBI have all had a cap of dollars available. But elderly waiver has never been that way. So they've always wanted to meet the needs of the elderly and try to maintain them in their own home or not in a nursing home. So
It's a very tough job, excuse me, Cindy, that you have when you have someone that is in a home setting and they're right on the verge of can they, can't they, they need to go to a home. Well, they really can make it. There's really not a bed available. What do we do? I have to tell you that to me is an amazing position that you're in, to be able to make that determination, because that's tough. That's really a hard job.
The case managers have become very skilled at really big picture, and let me tell you, they are creative. A lot of what we do is not just the services that they pay for, but looking at what are some of the informal services. Are there family members that can help? Are there volunteer programs that can help? And sometimes it's really a puzzle, putting all those pieces together and saying, this is what we're doing to keep this person safe. It might mean that we take that person out of the home one day a week to adult day services so that a caregiver gets a break and can continue the other 6 days a week. Or that maybe they go to adult day services because there's an appropriate place there for them to get a bath or a shower that they don't have a setup at home. Providing transportation is included in that, to and from those services. So it's really a very creative group of people, and it's kind of amazing when they have a difficult situation, they'll come together and say, I want a case consult, does anybody have any ideas? And throw around, oh, I tried this or I tried that. So yeah, a really creative group of people that make that happen. And I can honestly say I feel strongly that we have a lot of strong, supportive families in Morrison County that are very willing to pitch in and help mom and dad out to stay at home as well.
Very good. Gentlemen, comment, question, concern? Thank you. Thank you both very, very much.
Well, we're not done yet. We got some more waivers to talk about.
I'm not kicking you out either, but I'm thanking you.
So we've talked about developmental disability, DD waiver. Cindy has talked about over 65. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the other 3 waivers that we have in Morrison County, CAC, CADI, and BI. The CAC is the waiver that supports individuals who have some chronic, medically fragile conditions. We need to have that hospital level of care, but we want to provide that not in a hospital, somewhere in our community. So this waiver supports those services for those individuals. The CADI is for individuals, must start it before age 65, who meet that same nursing level services, but want to do that in their home. We very often see this for individuals who may have some mental health that impacts their functioning and ability, so they need some supports for employment, for getting groceries, for whatever that may be. And then the last one is the brain injury waiver, specifically for individuals who have had a brain injury. So the state lumps all 3 of these waivers together in one budget and manages it as a single waiver. So the first slide that you'll see is our enrollment. We have been incredibly busy in 2018, is what I will say. We have gone from 2017 of 116 people enrolled in CAT-CADI BI waiver to 133 individuals that we have currently enrolled in 2018. I would say some of this upward trend is because of that min-choice assessment that is being required by anybody who is receiving PCA. Now they see, oh, I have PCA, but I'm also eligible for CADI waiver. What kind of services might I be able to access through that? So I think that probably has a pretty big impact on our numbers. And again, the state with this waiver, as with DD waiver, is providing additional allocations. In 2018, we've received 22 new allocations that we're able to utilize for people to put onto the waiver and bring new money into our budget. And that's not always been the case for CAT-CADI BI waiver either.
But that doesn't mean that we don't need the people to work them. Granted, the funding comes there, but then the challenge comes with staffing levels and where to find people to do the work and where to put the people to do the work, and all of that is all-encompassing when it comes to those types of increases.
Absolutely. Just like I said in the DD waiver report, is that a case manager only has 40 hours in their week. It doesn't matter if you give them 40 people or 60 people or 80 people. They've only got 40 hours in their week and only that much time that they can help people and only that much time that they can bill for providing that case management. So. The next slide talks a little bit about those waiver allocations. Like I said, we received 22. The CAT-CADI BI waiver is on a fiscal calendar year, so their year started July 1. And then the next slide shows the budget for the 2019 year. That starts July 1, 2018. We have a budget of $8 million. And so that trend has continuously gone up. We continue to authorize close to that budget and utilize that every year.
And again, this is for adults and children, and part of these CADI waiver dollars has helped support kids in very intense living services that would be very expensive had we not had the CADI waiver available to support the needs of some of those kids, as well as adults. But I think we've really seen an impact from the children's end and being able to use some CADI dollars to support a living environment that will meet their needs for some very challenging kids.
Just off the top of my head, I want to say we went from 6 children's cases last year to 14 this year. So we've more than doubled the kids that are receiving waivered services. The budget.
If I may, Mr. Chair, from 6 to 14, what happened? Why was there that big trend in there? Is it, I mean, these kids were here all the time, or did they move in, or what?
I can't speak to any specific situations, but these kids were here. They've had high needs. They probably came with some very high trauma. And I think with min choices and the case managers and when we get involved, all varies about when we might make them eligible for a CADI waiver. Not to mention having a CADI waiver service available to meet their needs because they may have come out of residential treatment, which is not a CADI service, and been put into a CADI foster home. But this has really been a big support for some of these kids that are very high needs.
They may have been in a different program and then came to this program. So they're there, they existed, or, it's hard to tell with some of those.
In that case, it has nothing to do with min choices bringing them in need of more, or does it? Or could it?
Probably not the min choice assessments. Unlike adults, that is the case.
Okay.
Not to say there wasn't a child just receiving PCA services and then assessed, but for the most part, it's usually a mental health worker looking for some very intensive services that could be high cost, and then they will request a min choice assessment from social services.
And again, the vast, vast majority of these funds are state and federal funds.
Vast majority is federal dollars.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
could you explain for me that you got the budget line, the authorized line, and the paid? Explain them to me, please.
So Morrison County is awarded a budget amount. So this year, our budget amount from the state's identified for Morrison County is the $8 million. From there, we take and we authorize, the case manager authorizes services. So Joe is going to get services for employment and case management and independent living services.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but usually we authorize for a year?
Correct.
So we authorize those services for 1 year.
Yep. So.
Is our year January to January on this?
Nope, this
July
year.
1st.
Yep,
To June 30th, the state fiscal year.
The states, okay.
yep. So your orange line on here, your authorized, that's what everybody that currently is on a CAC, CADI, or BI waiver is currently authorized by their case manager to receive as services. And so then the single line there is what we've paid out. So even though we may authorize, just looking at 2017, we authorized $5,800,000. We only paid out $5,200,000. Some of those are just unused. The person was sick, so they didn't go to work and get the employment services or the independent living services, or for whatever reason, there were some unused authorized units in there. 2018s, you'll notice that line for being paid is quite a bit lower, and that's because they have 1 full year to bill for the services. So providers can go back 1 year from today and still bill on that budget.
Really? How do you keep track of that funding then?
Right? That is quite a good question. Yes.
Yes, they have to keep track, and we do work with providers on trying to get them to bill timely, but not all providers are able to bill timely. And so that waiver is open for 1 year, and we just have to continue to go back and look at it.
Again, I give credit to the case managers. They do a really nice job. They know their cases well. They know their providers well. They have ongoing communications with how many units. Here's how many units I've authorized you for the last 6 months. You've only used 3/4 of them. Are you going to use the other quarter or not? Then they'll pull those out. If they say, no, we're not going to use them, they'll pull them out of the budget. So I have an accurate budget to look at when I'm meeting with them every week.
Thank you, Penny.
It's complicated.
Very much.
I did want to just mention that DHS imposed a mandated 7% reduction on all framework rate services, on all the waivered services. So we have been noting some frustrations by providers about that reduction that was mandated.
And that was actually eliminated in the budget that was vetoed. So there was as we know, the big omnibus bill that all of the departments put together to go to the governor that was vetoed. They actually, I believe, did have that eliminated in that budget, but it was vetoed. So, yes, I think there's been a lot of the provider community that's had conversations with their legislators and with the governor about we're already working at a bare minimum in terms of what we're receiving. And so you'll probably see more around that come the next legislative session.
Mr. Chair, to Commissioner Blaine's point earlier, where how do we impact some of this that impacts the clients we serve? And a lot of that is providers. It's those that are providing the actual cares and those services out there in the community to make sure that the state is contracting at a level that they can be sustainable. And that's a big deal. So it's not only, what we do here at the county with authorizing that stuff, it's also that they can get the service and that they're able to provide that they're able to stay open, that they have the same issues with funding or finding staff, and all of that is all impactful to your constituents, to those out there in the community that need service. The dollars may be there to pay for it, but if the people aren't there to provide it, it becomes a problem for everyone.
Absolutely. The next slide shows a little bit about our case management revenue. Just as with the DD waiver, case management is billed in a 15-minute unit. And this year, one thing that we have done is we've added a waiver case aid. So that also is being billed in. You'll notice, again, the trend continues to go up. And again, I will reiterate that it can only go up for as much time as staff have to provide this case management service to them. Again, when we look at having, 20 plus cases that came in, that's a lot of additional time without any additional staff.
And as you might recall, too, the commissioners provided an opportunity for us to pilot added waiver reimbursement by hiring another social worker to do just strictly waiver. And so Penny and Melanie will hopefully be ready to provide some information and data to the commissioners early next year on if that has been successful in terms of being able to access waiver revenue and meet the needs of those individuals even better than we currently are. So. Anything else? Any other questions?
I would just like to say pretty intense, very intense, and it's amazing work, I think.
Mr. Chair, we have very good staff in all of the units, really paying attention to a lot of detail to make sure we're serving people, maximizing the revenue potential with them. It's a big deal. And then adding staff when appropriate, not adding when, just managing all that, making sure then staff are up to speed in terms of what they can do to serve folks and the dollars that come with it. It's complex, but they do a very good job. And I think at the root of it is we have a lot of people that care, to make sure that they care about those clients and keeping focused on those clients to make sure that they're getting the needs that they have met, and I think that's a big deal.
Very good. Thank you both very, very much. I appreciate it a lot.
That's all I have this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Land Services is next. Thank you. Miss Amy, it looks like you brought a team along with you today. There you go.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There you go. Thank you very, very kindly.
Yes, you did.
Supposed to get all this? Evidently. Sometimes.
To turn your microphone on and off. All right, good morning.
Good morning.
So in your packet, I have three things. A copy of the PowerPoint that I'm going to go through today, the list of survey questions that were provided for reference, and then the last packet is all of the written comments that we received on the surveys, because I just wanted to make sure that all of those got into your hands so you
Sure.
had the ability to see all of them.
Absolutely.
So we'll start with the first slide. So we had a great response to this survey. So we mailed out 334 surveys, and we received 266 responses. And then we had 6 of them that were undelivered. So all in all, that was a pretty good response rate. The next slide will show really the breakdown. So really what that does is that gave us a 79.64% response rate.
Good.
So as surveys go, that's pretty darn good. All right, next slide. So I'm going to go through, so what we did is we certainly took or measured the survey responses for each question, but then also made a few inferences and comparisons that we'll all go through. So question number 1 was, do you believe the current water level of Lake Chaminade is too high? And so of the respondents, 84.96% of them agreed that it is too high. 13.91% said that it's not, and then 1.88 just simply didn't respond to that question. Okay. Next slide. So then the next question was, do you believe there should be something done to lower the level of Lake Chaminade? 73.68% of the respondents said yes, that something should be done. 26% said no, and then 1.13 didn't respond to that question. So then in comparing question number 1 and number 2, so out of the percentage of respondents that answered yes, the current water level is too high, but no, something should not be done, 12% agreed that the water's too high, but no, we shouldn't do anything. Okay. So then question number 3 is, do you agree that the solution should be installing a mechanical outlet to lower the current water level of Lake Chaminade? 58% of the respondents said yes. 40% of them said no, and then 3% did not answer the question. Okay, then the next one, I'm just doing a little comparing and contrasting. So this is the percentage of respondents that said yes, something should be done, but, and then also, so on the left is the people that said yes to installing a proposed mechanical outlet, so 77% of the respondents said yes. And then on the right, 22% of those people qualified their answer, though, and said, I'd like to see an alternative, something other than that. Question 4, are you willing to pay a share of an assessment, current estimate at $285,000, for engineering and permitting of a mechanical outlet to lower the current water level of Lake Chaminade? 59% of the people said yes, they were willing to pay. 41% said no, they're not willing to pay. And 3% did not answer the question. Question 5, are you willing to pay a share of an assessment for the cost for installing a mechanical outlet, the current estimate at $2.3 million, to manage the lake level? 56% of the respondents said yes, they were willing to pay. 42% said no, they're not. And 4.89 did not answer the question. All right, and then comparing question 4 and 5. So on the far left, these are the respondents that agreed something should be done about the high water level. So these are the people that said yes to number 2, to question number 2. So 73% of the respondents agreed. In the middle, then these are the respondents. This is the percentage of the respondents that agreed something should be done. So it's that. So that I'm breaking out that 73% of the respondents that agreed something should be done. In the middle column, those are 76.2 were willing to pay for the engineering cost. 70.92% are willing to pay for the whole project.
So in that, Amy, if I could just clarify, out of that, those people that agree that something should be done, there is a component of them, anywhere from 25 to 30%, that aren't necessarily willing to pay for it.
Correct.
Okay.
So when I'm just looking at
Those-
the people that answered yes to agreeing that a mechanical or that something should be done, and extrapolating that then to say, and then of those people that said yes, something should be done, those are the percentage of people that are willing to pay then for that.
76% of the people of the 73.68% of the people agree that they're
Right.
willing to pay for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, now if I may go back to question 5, Mr. Chair. It says current estimate to manage the lake level. That question 5, it's a little over half that say yes, they want, a little, 42% no. But yet down here, it's saying 73/4 roughly are willing to pay for it. I don't quite understand if you look at here, well, I understand that.
Because we're looking at the correlation between the people that agreed with question number 2.
Right.
So they had to agree with number 2 and then also indicated they would pay. So it's a different comparison. So question 5 and then the next page, the comparison it's a different comparison. So I'm breaking out on the question.
I'm sorry.
You got it? All right. All right. Then question number 6 was, do you agree that the Lake Chaminade LID should be given the authority to administer a lake water level management program? 63.91% said yes, 35% said no, and 3% did not answer the question. And then the next one, this was just when people went through each question, there was people that had kind of qualified their answers or that had added some information. They circled yes, but then put an explanation. So just to let you know, this is the respondents that gave explanation to their answer, and for each question, not a ton of comments, but just to let you know kind of what the activity was. So example for question number 1, we had one person that gave a comment to their yes answer, and one person that gave a comment to their no answer. And then for question 2, 3. So the two that were commented on the most were the 4 and 5, which was, are you willing to pay for the engineering? Are you willing to pay for the installation project? And those comments are in that big packet, so you'll see all those. All right. And then the next graph is the percentage of surveys that where we got yes across the board, so yes to every single question and no to every single question. So 50% of the surveys received were straight up yes all the way down. 12% were no all the way down. And then the remaining percentages, we had a combination of yes and no. And then the last slide was the themes to the survey comments. We were able to kind of break, we had kind of some common themes to comments that people made in their survey. And this was at the bottom, we did allow a space for comments. This chart is reflecting that. And so we had 57 people comment that they would like to see an alternative method to lower the lake or to deal with the high water. 22 people commented on the assessment structure as far as the comment was generally, we'd like to see this on the amount of shoreline we own rather than a straight up per parcel assessment. 10 people commented that they certainly would like to see some grants or something to offset the overall cost of this project. 21 people commented that they feel other agencies should help pay, like the DNR, county, should help pay to offset this project. 19 people commented that they have no confidence in the lid. 17 people commented on the cause for this is due to diverted drainage culverts in the County Road 203 project. So that's really what we put together. Those are kind of some of the things that we drew that we thought were interesting and also would be of interest to you and to help you make some decisions now that'll be before you with the LID's proposed budget coming up. I also wanted to highlight my 2 interns because they did an immense amount of work. This was a big project, and so they processed all of these all of these surveys and entered the data, and then Galen actually put together these beautiful graphs that you see. I put together the PowerPoint. That's the only thing I can take credit for. But no, we had this was all hands on deck trying to make sure that we ensured the integrity of the survey and that we were considering every single survey and making sure that it was entered in and accounted for. So Arya is leaving us on Friday and Megan leaves us on next Wednesday. So this was kind of one of their final projects.
Ladies, you did a wonderful job. Thank you very, very much.
And since they worked with the data, they certainly can answer some questions too if you have any.
Gentlemen.
I have one question, Mr. Chair. It says number of assessed parcels and then mailed.
Yep.
Why is there such a difference?
There's a difference because we have people that own multiple parcels and we sent one survey. So we did eliminate the exempt parcels that don't pay the assessment. And then we also eliminated people that might own 5 parcels. We sent one mailing.
Okay.
So that's accounting for that difference.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Comments?
Thank you for the information. It's
You're welcome.
Valuable. Thank you.
And more to come on the topic. So Friday morning, we do have a meeting scheduled. As you recall, the last time we talked about this, direction was given to really consult with an expert. This concept, this whole idea is new to all of us. It's something none of us have done before, and so we want to make sure it's correct. There are some proposed changes that we got a few weeks ago from the LID regarding assessment structure that we want to we want to all be very confident in the fact that the proposals and the ideas out there are appropriate and legal. So we want to do that and make sure those are good. And so we have a firm working on that. And then also some questions about authorities. And I know the LID is requesting authority to be able to do more, like manage an outlet system and have some different abilities for permitting and things like that. They're also looking into making sure that that's covered correctly in terms of what authority they need in order to do various things that they're requesting to do throughout that process. So we're hoping to get some answers from those questions and get some information that can help lead you also into a direction to know for sure that everything that's proposed is okay to be proposed. We get into these numbers, and it was interesting. I was talking to the gentleman the other day, and the attorney's working on this, and there are, nobody's really questioned anything when you're dealing with $25,000 to help with an aquatic invasive species for a budget. But when you start getting into higher numbers, people are very, rightfully so, very concerned, and making sure that those processes to get those dollars, to raise those funds, to tax people is a big deal, and we need to make sure that that is correct. And so they were very helpful, have been so far, and I think will continue to be helpful, and they'll summarize all of that and we'll sit down on Friday right here at 8:30 to talk more about that.
Thank you.
Anything
further, gentlemen?
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I think, this was an important step. This was an important request by this board to get this information, and I don't want you or your team to leave the table till we appropriately say thank you for a comprehensive, very well done job on this, and we know that this is just one piece of this process, but this was important information, and we are all very grateful for your work and your department's work, and we know you've spent a significant amount of time. Staff has pumped a lot of time into this already, and there will be more, and we know, and we recognize that. Thank you.
Thank you.
More reading. Always like that.
More reading, yeah.
Yes.
I agree. Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay. All right, thank you. Have a good day. Next item that we have is the Veterans Report. Kathy's here this morning.
Let me see if there's a cup in there.
A lot of stuff.
Thank you.
This is to hand out, I think.
Good morning.
Good morning, Kathy.
So what I have there is just, we have every year we get in the last recent years, we've gotten a Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs Enhancement Outreach Grant. That grant is utilized to reach out to our veterans and improve the programs that we currently have. We get it's a $10,000 grant, and we are needing signature on the agreement and then the resolution from the board. Our focus this year for that grant is going to be reaching out to not only the veterans but also family members to provide them the information that they need so that we can get the service members and all veterans to us sooner so we can mitigate issues in the future. So even individuals that come back just from basic training in their initial entry training, if they can come in and see us sooner and be aware of the programs and entitlements they may have in the future, it could help them when they do run into a crisis situation. So that is what we have today.
I'd look for a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Discussion.
You know what, I gotta keep looking at this veterans homeless, Kathleen. Do all veterans qualify for something? I just don't understand why they'd be homeless if the Veterans Administration or somebody there trying to reach out to them.
So everyone that served may not be entitled to VA benefits. Not everyone, if they didn't deploy or they don't have some type of service-connected injury, they might not always qualify. But a lot of times when we see individuals who are homeless, they may have severe mental health issues or severe addiction issues, which bring them, we may get them housed somewhere, but a lot of places have rules for these individuals, and then they get basically kicked out of those places. And that's a lot of times what our biggest issue right now is we don't have appropriate facilities for people that maybe can't be with others that because of behavioral issues or addiction issues.
All right, thank you.
Kind of explained the $10,000, which I'm fully in support of. What exactly are you going to use that towards, to go towards? I understood what you said, but that's pretty broad. What does that really mean?
So we
Education?
do a lot of radio ads trying to focus on
very good.
information. We send out every year an annual newsletter to everyone that we have that has come to our office at some point or another. That's the veteran and the families. And it basically lets them know everything that we have available. Postcards are another thing we're thinking about this year, just probably mailing out to the entire county, because how are we reaching those people we haven't hit? So we can mail to all the people we have hit, but what about the people that are out there that we don't know about? So
And
that
it's
was
this
my-
grant that helps you do this.
Right.
Very good.
Yep.
We've got a motion. We have a second to that motion?
Yep.
Further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Kathy, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good day.
You bet. Next item is going to be county board warrants. Gentlemen, I would look for a motion to
Motion to
pay
pay all the
all the bills.
Second.
It's a roll call vote. Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Blaine.
Yes.
Lemire.
Aye.
Winter.
Aye.
And myself is an aye. That motion passes. Public Works report. Mr. Bukowski is in the house.
Just take a little supplemental information on my two requests that should be considered. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, Steve.
Steve, thank you very kindly.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good one.
Great. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, our first request for the board is authorization to accept the resignation of employee 380 of one of our maintenance techs. We haven't lost one of these for quite a while, but he's moving on to a better situation, I guess, in his opinion. But we are looking to maintain our staffing level in this area. I did provide a listing of the different divisions within the Public Works Department, and kind of goes back to the early 70s, and lists the variations that we've seen in the number of employees in each of those divisions. As things have changed, such as we didn't have solid waste in the early 70s, it wasn't until the 80s that became a division of the department, and we added staff to manage that part of what we do. We have kind of come to a level here with the maintenance technicians that I think manages the amount of work that we need to accomplish in that division. We've tried some other things where we were using more intermittent operators, and so we were short in the summertime because our intermittent operators are used in the wintertime. I think with the level of work that we are expecting out of that division, the number of staff there at 21 is the appropriate number. You can see after the economic hit there in 2008, we brought that down a little bit, but I think the level of service that the commissioners were hearing about wasn't what people were wanting, and we brought it back to 21 after and following that. So my request is that we would be authorized to replace this position. We have it in our budget, and continue at that 21 level within that division.
And Mr. Chair, I'm just going to clarify slightly for a motion to not be to accept the resignation, but to authorize the replacement, because they get to resign without us taking action on that. But it's that action that we need from you is to replace.
And that's what I would look for. I'd look for a motion to replace this position.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Further discussion.
I really like this sheet, Steve. That tells a lot of how many people have been working through the years, and I think most people think we have a lot more people working, and really we have about 7 less working than we did in 72.
I think in combination, when you look at the workload too, it's you know, that plays a big part of it.
Good, thank you.
Commissioner Lemire, did you second that?
Yeah.
Yeah, Greg did. Yeah, Blaine did.
Sorry, it was my fault.
I thought about it.
Sorry. Further discussion. Looking at the sheet that you passed out, Steve, and to look at it, and if I'm understanding it right, to see there was 38 employees in 1972. And I understand technology and all that kind of stuff. And I also understand the services that are provided by the county. And there's 31 employees today. That just kind of surprises me. And that's management. There's not a question in my mind about that. So I fully support this.
It's good people. We have some really good people out at Public Works too.
You bet. Further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The other action item I'm requesting is a request to relinquish a portion of right-of-way on our County State Aid Highway 8. When County State Aid Highway, like many of our highways, were constructed, we acquire right-of-way in that construction, and that right-of-way is typically based on the terrain that you're in, trying to balance the amount of dirt that you need to build the road when it's going through that process. And in areas that right-of-way varies, where in some places we go out several hundred feet. That right-of-way, in most situations, when construction was taking place in Morrison County, was acquired under a highway easement, a permanent highway easement. That plays and affects property owners now as time has gone on when they're trying to construct a building. Their setback is based on the right-of-way. Or in this situation, fencing and that type of thing that people want to construct and make their properties look decent and also comply with the law. In this situation, we have extended right-of-way through a property where it varies between 50 and 90 feet. They wish to fence it so that they can pasture it, and some of it is on the existing right-of-way, and we have to move it back because we're replacing culvert pipe on number 8 as a project this fall. And so what we have looked at is what we need throughout this section in order to be able to give a uniform right-of-way width along the length of the property that is being considered here. And these property owners are willing to give us additional right-of-way in that area that we have 50 feet going out to 55, which is at least what we need. And we would then limit the amount of right-of-way through the areas where we are wider. We would bring that down so that we have a uniform 55-foot right-of-way through the segment. We recommend that the board would approve this and relinquish that exceeds that 55 feet, contingent on the property owners signing the new easement at 55 feet in those areas that we have less than that.
Look for a motion.
So move.
Second. Got a motion by Commissioner Wilson, seconded by Commissioner Wincher. Further discussion. I will simply say that we had a planning meeting at the County Highway Department earlier. Steve presented this in detail, and certainly makes sense to me.
quite amazing when you go through some of this, even on railroad property, where one spot there's a 100-foot easement, the next spot there's a 50-foot easement, and people really don't understand that until they start to do some surveying or looking at stuff. So I'm glad we can fix this problem.
Further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Have a good day.
You too.
The next item on the, oh, there he is. Good morning.
Good morning.
Steve's here with the administration to talk about the procurement policy, federal programs, complying with new regulations. And that's what we have you for.
Well, like I said at the plan, originally we had the purchasing policy, and then the feds had some new requirements, so we had to set up a new policy just to adhere to the federal requirements for procuring federal dollars, and that's why in front of you today there's two different policies. One, I think the first one on the agenda is the procurement, which is the federal one, and the second one is just our own purchasing policy, which they do kind of go together, but the feds just have a few different things in their policy that require us to have it just a little bit different, a little bit different verbiage to it. So I need, we talked about it, and I just need a motion to approve the procurement policy at this time.
I'd look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
We went through this pretty thoroughly at our planning session and went through all the changes, and they look appropriate.
And again, I will say, thank you for everything that you do, Steve, because this is your baby. There's not a question about it. It's a money thing is all it is. It's how
we purchase things.
Exactly. So I appreciate that a lot.
Thanks for explaining that to us as we walk through that document.
Absolutely. Further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you, Steve.
All right, and then the next one would be just the county purchasing policy in itself. And there was just, we basically follow the state guidelines when it comes to, and what the state did is it changed some of the dollar values, and we talked about that, so that's basically the changes made in the Morrison County purchasing was just some of the dollar values increase depending on how we go out to bid on things, so.
So moved. We've got two motions, or?
I'll second.
Okay. Commissioner Blaine and Commissioner Wincher. Further discussion? Again, we talked about this in planning in detail. Steve explained it thoroughly. So, further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Steve, thank you very kindly.
Right, thank you. And the last item I have is to set a date for the Truth and Taxation hearing.
When would you like that to be?
The better question is, when would you guys like that to be?
When
We're open. It can be any time after November 24th and December 22nd, something like that.
What time normally is it at?
It's varied, depending. I mean, a lot of times AMC's played, the end of the year is played with it. I'm not sure. I was looking at calendars. That's why I didn't really have any dates, because I didn't see anything on AMC at the end of the, usually that's the first week in December.
Typically, I can tell you in the past, we've had them in the evenings. Oftentimes, it's been a Thursday evening of the week of AMC, just because it usually coincides during that time period. We have a board meeting on the 11th. We have a board meeting on the
20th.
AMC
Well,
this year is the 3rd and the 4th.
It needs
just
to be
gonna
approved
curious.
when again, Steve?
You're talking November.
The date itself?
No, what are the
You can do
dates?
it in November.
Oh, between the 24th of November and December 22nd.
Okay,
somewhere
that's
in
what I was saying.
How
So
about the 29th of November?
we'd want to adopt the levy on the 11th, right? That's the last meeting.
When's the last board meeting day?
Well, the 31st, but
Yeah.
Tuesday, Christmas
But
is a Tuesday this year, so we haven't scheduled anything for board that week. We have a board meeting already scheduled for the 11th. So if we can, my suggestion would be to do the Truth and Taxation meeting either that last week in November or that first week in December, because
Well, we have AMC on the 3rd down in
Yep.
Bloomington.
Well, can we do it on the 27th in the evening?
on a Tuesday evening?
Is that not a good thing?
No, that'd be fine.
November or December?
November
November.
27th.
Because of how the dates and where Christmas is, we're a little more limited on the board meetings
Yeah,
in December.
So that would be after the planning session you're talking about?
Yep, that
We
evening.
have a planning session at 8:30 in the morning, then could we have, is 6 o'clock? I forgot.
6 o'clock is the earliest time you can.
Okay, so could we do it at 6 o'clock at night? Do we have to do it for an hour? Do we have to do
Don't
a
have to do
specified
it.
time?
However long it lasts, we usually just advertise the start time.
So
with that one?
could we do truth and taxation on the 27th of November at 6 o'clock PM?
It works for me.
You
Okay?
got to check for, the only thing with that, make sure there's room here in the evening.
Oh, yeah.
it's city
I don't know, Tuesday.
Yes.
You have their meetings on Monday generally.
Generally, but we'll verify.
Okay.
So tentatively, I'm sure it'll be fine, but I'm just saying that
Yep.
we'll have to make sure we have room here, so.
You'd usually check it.
November 27th, which is a Tuesday, correct?
Yep. Truth and taxation, 6 PM.
And
All
we'll
right.
plan then to address the levy at that board meeting on the 11th, I think is the target to do that.
Yes, because we'd have to then approve the final
December.
Okay.
at that time, so. All right,
Thank you, Steve.
that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I guess while Steve's here, if you don't mind, the budget continues to move forward. They're due from the departments this Friday, and so as we go work through those budget committee meetings that you have scheduled, we'll work through getting presentations done, and Steve continues to do a good job managing that process for us, and I appreciate it thoroughly. We had some good discussion already regarding budgets and where they're at and fund balances and how that all comes into play, and so I appreciate your involvement and Steve's work on it, so thank you.
Yeah, like I said, I've only heard from a couple that are looking for an extension from this Friday, so hopefully and we'll talk more on the 14th, because right now, I think I've got everything scheduled. I think it's the 21st, I don't think I have anyone scheduled for that day, so we may be able to eliminate a meeting,
Okay.
but we'll hold it open in case you want to meet to talk about something else.
Yep.
The 14th is all outside agencies, and then the rest of them will be county departments after that, so.
Beautiful.
And so everything's, the ones I've gotten, it looks like we're doing pretty good. I haven't seen them all, but we did get a little increase in our program aid of about 10,000, almost 11, which is helpful. It's always good to get a little more than a little less. So that always helps the bottom line too, so. And interest income's going to be a lot better for us this year too. Which hasn't been the case in the last number of years. I mean, hell, I remember back when we first started, interest income used to be budgeted at around $650,000 a year, and we haven't been even close to that for a long time. So
Things have changed.
things have changed a little bit. Interest rates are a little bit higher, so for us, that's a good thing too. So, but we'll get into that at the next budget meeting.
Thanks, Steve.
All right,
Standing.
thank you.
Gentlemen, our next item on the docket is committee reports, upcoming schedules. That's going to be between
Administrator's
August.
report, Mr. Chair.
Oh, good
I
grief,
jumped.
thank you. I'm
It's
jumping
okay to
ahead.
forget me 'cause
I'm
I
ignoring,
run
and I didn't mean that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I don't have action items, so that's why it's so easy.
You just wanna
forget that I'm
visit.
there. I just want to visit and say hello and good morning. No, we continue with the building project. The roof is progressing. They're on the 90s building over there and hopefully wrapping that up soon. They're installing most of the millwork and the ceilings are installed. The sound management system is in. It's looking so much more complete. It's crazy. So if you get a chance and would like to bop your head in there, just let me know. We're working on some details yet with furniture because that's coming up quick. The deadline or the goal is to get in and occupied by the end of September or shortly thereafter. So the November election can be held upstairs on floor 1. Instead of down in the garden level where it's at right now.
Sure.
So things are progressing, things are moving forward, really learning a lot again and value the work that like CGI does for us, Contegrity and things of that nature. It's been very helpful because this isn't something somebody does every day or whatnot. So to have those folks in the business assisting is very beneficial. So we're working through it and it's going well.
Anything for Deb?
Nope. Okay.
Catch you off the hook pretty easy today. All right, we're going to do schedules now. We're going to start with Commissioner Wincher, and we're looking for schedules from August 12th through the 25th.
Okay, on the 14th, we have a planning session at 8:30, and we have budget at 1. I have a TCC meeting on the 16th at 5 o'clock here in Little Falls. Again, on the 21st, we have board at 9 and budget at 1. On the 23rd, I have a SWCD meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning here in Little Falls. And then on the 25th, they have the Lake Shamana annual meeting at 9 o'clock at the church in
Lincoln.
Scandy Township or whatever it's called. So that's it for me.
Commissioner Lemire.
The 13th on a Monday, the Yellow Ribbon, 5:30, cabin fever. 15th, Public Health at the Public Health Library, 5 o'clock. And you got the other ones.
Mike?
I've got airport on the 16th at noon, and on the 24th, Mississippi Headwaters at 10 o'clock in Walker. That's it.
Commissioner Blaine.
I think we cleaned everything up except I have an RFDA meeting on the 23rd at 4 o'clock.
Okay. And Tabitha, I'm not exactly sure what you have down for me. Go ahead.
And I'm sorry, I need to scroll a little bit more here. On the 23rd, I also have a Region 5 meeting in Staples.
Can I ask you about that?
And thank you, Tabitha, for watching out for me.
Anything else for him? Nothing. Let me take a look here. Toward Zero Death on the 14th has been canceled. On the 15th at 5 o'clock, I've got a Hands of Hope meeting in Todd County. On the 16th, I'm going to be attending a Communications in Crisis event in the morning at Sourcewell in Staples, starting at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I'm not positive there's a Egg Society meeting at 7:30 that night. I don't think there is because obviously the fair is this week, so I'm thinking that that's canceled.
I'm not going to put that on there?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, upper deck, that's a go. Spear Financial, On the 22nd, at 1 o'clock, I've got a Central Minnesota Emergency Services Board meeting. It's the Executive Committee is meeting in St. Cloud. At 6 o'clock that night, there's some type of a township meeting that the Morrison County Townships, I believe, host, and I think it's at the Falls Ballroom.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I remember that from the spring meeting that we had. I wrote it down.
We put it on our calendars then.
I don't know, I don't have any details about it.
It's not their semi-annual meeting.
No, this is something else. It's a township meeting that Morrison County Townships host. That's the most I can tell you.
But if I may, Commissioner Jelinski, I also have on my calendar, I was going to mention this before we jumped off this. That same day, August 22nd, there's a barbecue event at the ballroom for the county chaplaincy program.
On the 22nd.
And so that's plugged in on here too. So I have that on here as an event to attend that day. So I'm not sure how both of those could coexist at the ballroom on the same day.
Yeah, right? Maybe you just want to strike anything I said.
No, I mean, and that's saying that I actually plugged this event in on the correct day on my calendar. And that's asking a lot. So, but we'll
see.
We'll get together and we'll sift through that pile of wheat.
Not very sure. On the 23rd at 12:30, there's a State Emergency Communications Board meeting. It's an armor meeting in Arden Hills. I doubt that I'll be there, but it's there. I'll attend the Wacky Hacker Golf Tournament in Piers. I'll be working at that on the 24th, and that's all I've got. Jerry?
Is there community development on the 21st?
There is, but I'm on vacation, so I won't be there. And that's same with Council of Aging.
Okay.
So
Anything further? Look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Gentlemen, we're adjourned. It's 10:38.